All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Lieutenant General Mike Farrader, President and CEO of the National Veterans Memorial Museum in Columbus, Ohio. And welcome all of you. Today's another great day to be a veteran and another great day to be a leader and another great day to be alive and to be with us. So thanks for joining us. Today, we're very privileged and fortunate and excited to have Josh Munz with us. Let me tell you just a little bit about Josh. He's a 2005 graduate from the United States Military Academy, a cavalry officer, a ranger who led his troops in combat, his reconnaissance platoon during Iraq. Josh served during the very, very busy and combat-filled period in Iraq that's often called the Surge. He's of the very famous class of 2005, many of whom were killed in action, many of whom were wounded, and all of whom were touched by their experience. You know, we're all about strength and resiliency and impacting lives at the NVMM, and this is the way we've shifted our fighting stance. We can't open the door and let you walk through to experience the very special nature of the National Veterans Memorial Museum. But we have opened our doors through Facebook Live, through webinars, through blogs, and through memorial events that are both digital and online. And so we are open, we are impacting lives, and we are connecting today. And so with that, it's a real pleasure for me to welcome Josh. And Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself and your compelling and amazing story.
General Farrader, it's great to be with you and everybody else that's joining us today. So thank you, sir. And following up, we had the chance last year to do an event at the museum, some storytelling about these experiences. And I just kind of wanted to draw out a couple points to reinforce those as it pertains to kind of the situation we're experiencing right now. For those of you who don't know, the short gist of this is that on April 21st, 2007, I was shot by an enemy sniper. The bullet first passed through the aorta of my senior non-commissioned officer, Staff Sergeant Marlon Harper, killing him, and then ricocheted into my thigh, my upper right thigh, and severed my femoral artery, which, as many of you probably know, typically with a wound like that, you have about 2 minutes to live at best. And thanks to the efforts of a 19-year-old medic who just leaves me in awe, and a dynamite emergency medical team who just refused to quit. Basically, what happened is I went on to flatline. I died for 15 minutes straight. The typical medical standard when somebody flatlines is usually around the 6-minute mark. That's oftentimes when many physicians and the ER teams will sort of call it on a patient, because that's the point when catastrophic brain damage sets in. But something sparked this medical team to keep going for an impossible 15 minutes and pulled back a faint pulse. And I found out long after the fact that just how far they went to save my life. We were evacuated to a very rudimentary treatment facility and with very basic life-saving equipment in the middle of Baghdad. And, for example, they were basically working on me on top of a cot, and I was still conscious for all of this. But it turns out that there was a mechanical failure of the cot, and they couldn't lower it to the proper height to do CPR. And I found out afterwards that there was only one person on that team who could actually reach and get the leverage to do it. And that was a former football lineman, young private first class, named PFC Tipton. And it was he and he alone who did live CPR on a victim for 15 minutes straight, just pouring sweat the whole time. And they did it standing on top of an MRE crate. That Blackhawk, they get the faint pulse back, and it's just so inspiring. They all this was happening while I was gone, right? But they raced me to the green zone on a Blackhawk helicopter, and there again I was met by a vascular surgeon team who conducted a perfect vascular surgery the first time out the gate. And before you know it, I was on my way through the medical evacuation process. 30 units of blood were delivered to save my life. Your body only holds a couple bags, so I kept bleeding it out. And thanks to many of the soldiers on the base, they were just taking blood out of their arm and putting it straight into me. There's no time to test it. And the whole point of this is that the only reason that I'm alive today is thanks to an ecosystem of people, an ecosystem of teams, all of whom chose to do one more thing in the face of extreme adversity and really defy all the odds to pull me back. And I kind of wanted to start with that story because I've spent the better part of 10 years trying to lift up that medical community. And those of you who have seen the museum display, that is the story that's in the museum. That's the story that we chose to preserve. And I don't think it couldn't be more appropriate right now to start with this and say thank you to our medical teams and ER professionals across the world. This is their 9/11. And one kind of central facet of this is that creativity loves chaos, and human beings and the power of the human spirit, in times of greatest adversity, we often experience just the most exceptional things from each other. So thank you to our medical teams right now. The second thing, we didn't really get much into this last year, but kind of what I specialize in is psychological trauma. And working a lot with the behavioral health community and leaders across the country to make an impact in that regard. I didn't talk much about trauma when we did the event at the museum, but I thought I'd just throw a little bit of that out to give you some perspective on it, and to maybe kind of view what's happening right now and over the last couple of months through a slightly different lens. And I'm bringing this out hopefully to validate the experiences of the folks who are watching right now, of all of us. We're all in this together, and I think when you look at trauma from the research world, it's helpful to break it down into kind of 3 different categories of trauma. These aren't exhaustive; they're just helpful to help us talk about it. But they stem from 3 sources. One of those is life threat. The second one is traumatic loss. And the third one is moral injury. Life-threatening situations involve an actual or perceived threat to my own life or someone that I love. And I think that this is a situation right now where some of you may have been directly impacted by this virus, and some of you may have come to the point of nearly losing your lives or know people who have. And for those who have come back from an experience that really did threaten their life in a big way, the challenge of that isn't necessarily surviving it. The challenge of it is integrating the meaning of it afterwards, right? And understanding that the power of that collective vulnerability. Death, or the threat of death, is considered by many to be kind of an ultimate transformative experience, because it can just force certain questions in front of us that we have to contend with now. And kind of the whole point of this event today is that by hopefully giving you permission to talk about these things, to articulate these things, it is that power of articulation that can disarm and disrupt the onset of trauma over time. The second aspect of trauma is traumatic loss or the grief process, and that deals with the sudden or unexpected loss of those we love. I had a very powerful near-death experience, and our purpose today is not to go into near-death. I've actually been very reserved on talking about that for the better part of 10 years because I wanted to be able to talk about it responsibly, and it's a very interesting topic to get into. But what I will say is, after just putting years and years of thought and research into this, and bouncing it off of my own experience, what I will say is that the precise moment of death, that transition from life to death, it was the most peaceful experience of my life. The more important maybe part of that too is that there was no sense of finality in death. There was no stoppage. It was a fading in to death, just as we fade into life. You know, we don't really remember our first conscious moments. We kind of fade into life and gradually become more aware. And then, you know, in this moment of death, I noticed that directly, and I'm willing to share that with you if it does anything to put your minds or help the situation at all if you were impacted by loss during this situation. And the final one that I think is really important to talk about is moral injury or moral tension. Maybe even moral resilience is a way to discuss it. Morality has a lot of stigma behind it, and it's often viewed, when we talk about moral injury in military circles, a lot of people tend to attribute it to the commission of some kind of egregious act that is clearly immoral, and that is a moral injury. And that certainly falls within the moral injury spectrum and within this category, but those events are exceptionally rare. And I think today, especially in our armed forces, we hold a higher moral and ethical standard than we ever have, and continue to push that. So what I'm talking about is these different shades of morality that are infused within our lives. And I've been taking, this is what I specialize in, right? So I've been, like a nerd, I've been taking notes during the daily press conference for the first month of this on the moral landscape of COVID. And what you'll notice is this entire situation is, by the administration, is being run through moral appeals to people, right? We are appealing to people's moral foundation to stay inside, to do the right thing, to help the United States of America, to help the world, right? So whenever you feel that conscious, that tug pulling at you to say, well, maybe I should stay in today and not go to the grocery store for this extra trip, that is morality working. That is morality in action, right? And there's that's a very small, very basic example. But if you feel that kind of tension at all, like, what should I do? I would actually say that's actually a positive thing, to be in that state of tension right now, because it shows me that we're thinking about these things responsibly. The other aspect of morality on a much more severe angle would be, who gets a ventilator if there's only one and two people are critical? You know, this is something called an irresolvable moral dilemma. Each case results in a negative outcome, regardless of the decision made. And that, again, wrapping back around to this, are the types of just tremendous decisions that our medical professionals are making, and that we will need to continue, just like we have our veterans over the last decade. We need to continue to surround our medical professionals as they move forward with this type of endeavor as well in their healing process. So before we pass it back over to General Farrader, I'll just kind of close with three basic points. Things that I've garnered over the years as I've kind of gone through this process of this journey, right? And what has been garnered of it. The first thing is number one, that psychological trauma and adversity is universal. Certainly, there's specific fields and there's specific differences within populations, but adversity is part of life. And like I said before, sometimes when we're hit with the periods of greatest adversity, it's the times where we can also find the very best in people. The second point is that healing is a journey. It's never a fixed point in time. It's not necessarily about overcoming trauma or overcoming this pandemic. It's about learning to live with it and learning to integrate the meaning from it together as we move forward in time. And then the final point here is just the power of articulation, something that the National Veterans Memorial Museum and General Farrader focus very heavily on, is giving people permission to communicate and articulate their experiences. And as simple as that may sound, it's actually one of the most difficult things that we can do. We are trying to give language to very complex emotions. And the reason that we do that is when we can articulate things, the more effectively we can articulate things, the more we disrupt the power of psychological trauma and adversity. So, we were talking about this a little before the event, and I think, if the outcome of this event today is that this sparks other discussions between you and your family members or friends or coworkers, that's where we're really going to win here, right? Is we want to give you permission to articulate your experiences and move forward through this together. So again, pleasure to be here with all of you today. I'm going to pass it back over to General Farrader, and I believe we're going to jump into some Q&A.
That's right. Thanks, Josh. So if you're joining us, you've joined the Facebook Live with Josh Montz, veteran of Iraq, graduate of the United States Military Academy, wounded to the point of having flatlined and been brought back to life. And this is us, the National Veterans Memorial Museum. And we really want you to be a part of us. We want you to be a part of our activities that we'll talk about, that we're doing virtual runs, an online and virtual Memorial Day coming up, and as well as joining and being a member. I've got my brand new COVID membership cup here for everybody. You can get one yourself if you have tape and a Sharpie in your house. Hey, so listen, everybody's working issues is what great leaders say, and we have to know that. And then we should lead, or we should be on a team and find a way to handle the mission as well as take care of those issues. And when you're on a team, you're connected. So let's talk just a little bit about the power of connectiveness. And before we do, Josh intimated that, hey, the rules from here on out are type of question. We'll get the question pushed to us, and then Josh can handle the questions that are difficult, and I'll take all the easy questions. But so let's go ahead and if you would talk about this idea of being connected, because I think that is one that's universal as well, Josh. So Josh, what's in your mind?
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the power of being connected. How do you see that, and how has that impacted you and those that you've been with?
Connection in multiple ways. I'd say, I think he's even joining us now, but one of my West Point classmates is on here. I mean, and this is just the most recent example I can think of. Is we connected recently after a post I made on social media, and we reconnected after 10 years and just found out how similar our paths were. Very different in their own respects, but we kind of ended up sharing many of the same deep emotions, right? That we both felt quite isolated in many respects, but when we were able to connect with each other, it was just a tremendously uplifting experience, and it kind of folks like that, we've kind of leveraged this time to really do some powerful work in the shadows here.
Hey, Josh, let me ask this. So, because it's really an interesting thing that there's so many ways that you have this sense of compression, and so I gave you a treat a few months ago, and if you'll show that, but I think people will get it. So check this out. This is a rubber band ball. And actually, Dorian had it on her desk. Dorian's our superstar executive assistant. And I grabbed it because I say, this is what you feel like when you're in a situation that day after day after day, you have to lace your boots back up, or you have to go back out there, and one more rubber band gets put on there. And suddenly it's a pretty tight ball. And this idea of journeying back, I think, can be told through this rubber band ball, because you can't just have a parent, a loved one say, all right, it was tough, get over it. We got to unwind that ball, almost one rubber band at a time. What are your thoughts on this?
Sir, I couldn't agree more. It speaks to kind of three sort of qualities of trauma, right? Trauma is not simple. It's very complex stuff, right? We kind of have to look through it at different lenses. But trauma is cumulative. It is complex, and we have to take into account the intensity of the experience, right? So complexity, how many different variables are involved, how many different variables are converging upon us in this point in time. Intensity, how powerful are each of those variables that are contributing to the nexus, and the cumulative nature of trauma, or the chronicity of trauma, is how often are we experiencing these things. So what that means is I can experience a very acute, very brief, very fast, highly traumatic experience, such as getting shot or being sexually assaulted or something to that effect, right? With a lot of complex variables. But I can also be traumatized and certainly significantly changed by the chronicity of low intensity events over time. Yeah. Right? They gradually build themselves up. And I think that's what you're referring to, sir, is each one of these rubber bands represents a different traumatic contribution to this ball. And that the disarming this, it's a process of articulation and connection and understanding this.
Hey, we got a question, a statement from Robert. If you can see that. Mm-hmm.
Statement from, oh, I'm sorry. It looks like Robert said trauma hides, grows, and escalates in the darkness of silence. It's a great point. And I think, sir, that speaks to a lot of what you're saying earlier about isolation, I think.
This audience didn't hear it probably, but what I said is, often, you could be in a paratrooper reunion and walking through our museum with 30 people, yet feel isolated because of where you are. And so being isolated and being connected doesn't mean that you're physically in a group. It's the deeper thought. Sometimes people push away. Jennifer Ballou's asking us a question. See what that says and give us some insights on her question.
Well, it looks like Jennifer is asking, how do you recommend we connect with someone who is isolating themselves, pushing others away, when you know they are struggling to deal with trauma? Jennifer, you're asking one of the most significant questions that I think you could ask about trauma. It's one of the most difficult to answer, and it's especially difficult to answer broadly because each person is so unique and different, and whatever's driving them into isolation. Here's what I do think can potentially help with that, though. One is so one thing that I've noticed going through this process, and it's actually, I attribute this to a former officer who I used to serve under, but there were, I think it comes down to cultivating a sense of humility in one respect, in that in my darkest moments, many times the people in my life who were closest to me knew more about me than I knew about myself at the time.
Wow.
And I didn't know that, right? So the challenge is when we go into these depths of isolation and we truly believe that we're alone, that like the comment earlier, like that continues to escalate and reinforce this separation from the world. And I've kind of trained myself to in moments like that to be very self-aware, and even if I don't agree with what someone's saying, or even if I viscerally maybe have a reaction to it, I've actually kind of trained myself to say, hang on a minute, these other people in my life have a different lens on me, right? And I need to be humble to be able to receive what they're seeing, so that we can kind of determine where truth lies and move forward. I realize that doing anything we can to look, the people have to want to help themselves too. Okay, this is, and I'm saying this for you and for anyone else struggling with this question. I think it's one of the most challenging things for for parents, loved ones, when we see someone who appears to be doing, taking these unhealthy actions, and we just feel helpless and powerless. I just want to say that is a form of trauma, too. Is the powerlessness of not feeling like we're able to help. And the best advice I can give you on that is to don't give up. Do everything you can to set the conditions for that individual's reemergence into the world when they're ready for it. And it's a matter of constantly reinforcing that we are there for you. We're here to support you. And the moment that something is able to dislodge them from that isolation, there's a structure of support already in place. So I really appreciate the question, and thank you for asking that, Jennifer.
Mark and I sat on the Chief of Staff of the Army Survivor Outreach Council, and we had a wonderful woman who was responsible for really Central Florida. And so she was down there. She had Army Guard Reserve and other services. And a young soldier killed himself up at Fort Drum, and his father was a Navy captain and really was really angry. And she called him every single first day of the month to reach out to him for a year. At the end of the year, maybe the 13th month, he said, "It occurs to me you're trying to help." And he had begun drinking heavily. He'd lost his wife and all of that. And he ended up coming on that. He ended up being one of our strongest advocates. And so the message is never quit. Don't give up trying to help. Use phrases like, let's figure a way to talk this out. Let's figure a way for me to understand the issue you're having. I know you're having the issue. I can't quite get there. And then also know that those rubber bands come off for every single person at a different rate, speed, and timing. And breakthroughs occur, and then there's stalls. So the fact that you're there will always be appreciated. The fact that you're there will not always. They won't always articulate at that moment in time. But like her, when he finally said, "Gosh, you've been," because it could have been dead file. Could have been, this guy he's never going to come around. I have other people I need to put my time on. She never quit. So here we are, about halftime of a great opportunity to meet with Josh Mons. He is featured among 25 of veterans from World War II to the current, both all the conflicts and interwar years in the National Veterans Memorial Museum. And he's a part of the class of 2005 at the National Veterans at West Point. And his story is a compelling one. He and I met at the grand opening, 27 October, when he came to see how the museum came together. He came and spoke to us, and we've asked him now as a night, as a gathering. A couple of things I want everyone to know is coming up, we on Saturday the 2nd, we'll have a virtual rally point, and then you'll hear from Doc Campbell and Teresa Larson about resiliency and more about being strong during all times. It'll be led by Gretchen Klingler, our Veteran Outreach Coordinator. We have a virtual run. You can go to our website or this Facebook site and sign up. You can do your 5K run or walk wherever. You can be the winner of your race, and you'll still get a t-shirt from us. So register now. And then also Memorial Day, tune in for that. We are looking for stories, inspiring stories. So either by way of blog or a 15-second call out. And on Memorial Day, you'll be able to say, "I will always remember," and we'll play that during the course of the day. So Kim seems to have a statement for you as well. Go ahead.
Kim, this is awesome. What Kim said is a lot of what I'm currently feeling about the virus is similar to serving during the Vietnam War era, but not in Vietnam. I wasn't at risk on a daily basis, but felt somewhat guilty that yet I was still worried that I might be sent to Vietnam at any time. Now, as a senior, I'm not on the front lines fighting the virus, but concerned as to people what might happen if I got the virus again. A sense of guilt that I'm not doing all I can for others, but still worried for myself. What a powerful message from a Vietnam veteran. Kim, I just want to say that I'll tell you, when this thing first went down a couple months ago, we are used to being on the front lines. We are used to being in the middle of the crisis. We're not used to sitting on the sidelines. And I found myself sitting on the sidelines. And I felt guilty. I was about to go apply for jobs, and like it was a tremendous level of guilt. And I don't know if you joined us last year, but we remember, and also this is kind of that moral injury, right? This is a really great different shade of moral tension. I felt this COVID for me, like you, Kim, how you related to Vietnam. COVID for me felt like I was at the beginning, like I was back at West Point after 9/11 happened. And I had, our class had to basically wait 4 years to participate in the main effort. And along those 4 years, we'd get messages, every couple of weeks that more recently graduated cadets were killed in combat. Soldiers and service members were dying in combat. The challenge for me of getting through West Point, and I think for a lot of my classmates, it wasn't just the challenge of the academy itself. It was staying at the academy because of that sense of guilt. And I felt the same when I was wounded. Some folks, a lot of folks that didn't necessarily understand the nature of kind of who we are, were really wondering why I was going back. After I got shot, I went back to Baghdad 4 months later. There's a bit of a story behind that, and I'm not quite sure how I pulled that off, but we pulled it off. But part of what drove me to go back there more than anything else was just a powerful sense of guilt, sitting in the hospital bed at Walter Reed and not being able to do anything about it, right? And that not being able to do anything about it, that powerlessness, that is a form of moral tension, right? That is a form of trauma. So how did I kind of overcome that? How did I come to terms with that myself at the beginning of the COVID crisis? Well, I wish I had it with me. Maybe I can grab it real quick, but I actually I decided the best thing to do is, this is the 9/11 for our medical community. I know so many friends of mine who just were riddled with guilt because they couldn't join the military due to medical reasons when 9/11 happened. And now one of my best friends is in the medical profession, leading an ER team, and he's at the center of it. This is his time. This is the medical community's time. We need to lift them up with the same intensity that people have lifted us in the service professions up over time. And I think there's kind of a beautiful thing in that about our country, that and I saw this with the medical team that saved me. That day was the day where I learned really what it meant to be a member of a team. It wasn't just infantry, it wasn't just army. This was the spirit of the American service member, right, at that time. And what we're seeing now is the spirit of the medical community. So I think gratitude, lifting them up, right, that is a way to overcome guilt here and acknowledge that this is their time, right? Sir, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
No, I think I do. I think you're right on. Kim, you can also be a part of another way that we think we are connecting and helping people, and that's letter writing. We currently have a campaign. You can go to our website, nationalbmm.org, or this Facebook site will help you. And you'll see that we're writing letters to veterans who are in the Chillicothe veterans community, and there's an address there. But you know what? My son Dan's deployed today. My son Patty's deployed. They both deployed a number of times. We have, friends and friends. A lot of this stuff is family business. And so we make it routine to connect. And so you also have friends who are first responders, Kim, you have all of you out there, you have family, make it routine so they can count on you on a Thursday night or a Sunday afternoon or every morning at 10, whatever frequency they benefit from. Be that giver who says to them, you keep going, this is important. We're not only going to get through this, you're going to lead us through this. And begin that kind of reconciliation of the fact that they're deeply involved in it, but it doesn't need to be so deeply involved in them. And so you can do that. And you know what? It's all right to feel like I wish I could do more. Your feelings are A-okay. Hey, Josh, we had Jennifer Ballou last week. Of course, she's an expert in master resiliency. And so on the also taste great side of the house, what are some of the habits that you develop and that you follow through to make sure that you come out of your rack in the morning at a high rate of speed and take on each day with a positive mental attitude? Over.
Sure. Thanks for that question. That's a great question. I really come back to, and something that's kind of stuck with me since I was in command at the Warrior Transition Unit, right? I found the power of integral care, of comprehensive, holistic outlooks to our lives across the domains of the comprehensive soldier fitness was the version of this in the Army. But we looked at soldiers across the domains of spiritual strength, social strength, emotional strength, mental strength, and physical strength, right? So there's others, right? That's not exhaustive, but it's ways to kind of look at different functions and aspects of our lives so that we can enter into a certain type of practice that can set us up for success and optimal performance during the day. So for me, like, physical fitness is absolutely crucial. I train to survive and I train to be effective. If I stop moving, my body is going to disintegrate and I'm not going to be as effective. So during this pandemic, sometimes we have to get creative with how we train and how we work out. You don't need much to move. It's not about going and crushing a CrossFit workout. It's about movement, right? Our bodies are designed to move. So on my patio out here, I set up rings and a 15-pound kettlebell, and that's what I've been training with for the last 2 months. Yep. And I'd say you might not think much about a 15-pound kettlebell, but when you do hundreds of reps unbroken for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time, and then you can get it. It doesn't take much to be physically fit and take care of our bodies. So I'd say that's number one. We are putting ourselves at an extreme disadvantage when we do not work out because there's very real and very powerful hormonal effects to our body that basically sets the conditions for our success. So in short, I kind of adopt a practice in the morning that involves stretching, a workout, and basically a meditative series where I'm kind of reflecting on more or less spiritual things and that alone, that function alone, and most of the folks I know who are kind of in the optimal performance world, one common thread is that they all adopt a practice. They don't call it a routine, right? They call it a practice, which means doing something with intention, right? Doing something with the desire to participate and improve.
Yeah, I'd like that. Thanks for the sharing that. Gretchen will lead us through some discussions on Saturday's Rally Point. And we've coined the phrase, wellness, fitness, foodness, and restness. And so that's just, they have to put up with me. But there's a whole health that Gretchen did research on that had 8 components. The point simply is create that practice and start on purpose. Admiral McCraven says, make your bed. It's very healthy not to sit around in pajamas and in a robe. Rather, change your clothes a few times. Get up, put your PTs on, or whatever you're going to do. Then have a healthy meal at the right time when you want to, have some kind of fitness in there, and then some kind of positive self-talk. One of the things, Josh, that we pitch in our seminars is this thought of, hey, stop right there, take 2 steps back. And we use that metaphorically to say, if you're in a parking lot and someone's approaching you, you would tell them to stop. And we want you, in fact, to keep your safe space, keep your defendable space. So stop right there, take 2 steps back, but it's also a positive self-speak approach. So when your negative talk shows up, you can tell yourself, hey, stop right there. Or when you're looking over there at your best friend, Jack, Mr. Jack Daniels or Mr. Glock, you can say, take 2 steps back. Let's go back to the objective rally point, the last known point of sanity, and then let's reach out to somebody who will help. But with regard to positive self-talk and that kind of thought process and technique stuff, would you give some thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, sir. I think that positivity is vital, especially in moments of severe depression. I'll share something with all of you that's actually kind of a pretty recent update, just since last year, since we spoke at the museum less than a year ago. That talk, for those of you who were there, it was both a beginning and an end for me in some ways, and I didn't even know it at the time. But basically, I was really struggling when I was there with my physical health at the time. I for the better part of 2 years, I had some issues reemerge with the gunshot wound that I was able to push through for the first year or two, but last year it just got really bad, and it stopped me in my tracks. It stopped me from working out. It drove me into isolation. I couldn't go out and meet people for coffee without being in pretty severe pain. And the problem with that is everything I got from the medical community was, there's nothing we can do about this. Mm-hmm. And every time I hear that, my typical response, when I got shot, I went back to Baghdad in 4 months. I wasn't supposed to be walking in 6. When I had surgery for Crohn's disease and had body parts removed, I ran a trail race 12 years later to regain emotional leverage over the disease, right? This time, though, it wasn't snapping back. And for me, this turned into a prolonged period of really unwanted isolation, the better part of a year and a half. And I was, starting to, my business was starting to fail, because I couldn't participate in it. I was struggling in grad school, everything was kind of converging, right? We talked about the complexity and the convergence of intensity. Well, this was in the form of, basically, I was forced to sit in my living room, cross-legged, with a book in my hand, right? And I thought life was kind of going to change. I didn't know what to do, right? I had to learn how to basically live again, and I thought things were really going to change. And in the midst of that, I kind of had, in the darkest moment of that, I really had this epiphany. And I realized, back there on that bookshelf, I have more books than I could probably get through in a lifetime. I've got more experiences to reflect on than I can probably do in a lifetime. And I've got a guitar sitting over here which is an endless source of creativity. What else could I want, right? It was kind of in that where I sort of surrendered to it. And I realized a big thing, and this is kind of a change from my book. The subtitle of my book was Overcoming Trauma Through the Power of Human Connection. And I've since changed that. And I realized last year that it's not about overcoming. It's about learning to live with, learning to integrate, learning to face the reality of a situation and learn to work around it. And I had to, basically, over the last year, I've learned to live in a different way so that I could continue to train. Look, there's diet, there's training, there's positive talk, there's gratitude, there's many different techniques that we can employ in this, as we fight this insurgency of our minds, right? And I'll tell you, everything that I've been through, last year was the darkest year. It was the most challenging year, but coming through that, Like, and now being out here in Las Vegas, like it also laid the foundation for all the work that's about to come. And I'm grateful for it. But I can also, that's again why I say, like, respect this stuff. It's a journey. It's not a fixed point in time. And it's these things we're talking about doing now on a daily basis that allows us to live life, right? And that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. You know, we talked about you know, how do you help someone and stuff like that. And you know, I wanted to kind of give a call out last night. J.C. Glick and others had invited me. A great guy named Witters invited me to MVP, which is merging veterans with professional athletes, MVP. And so they said, hey, you know, sir, it'd be great if you could come on this Zoom session or whatever it was. I said, absolutely. Well, I turned it on last night at 1900 West Coast time, 7:00 p.m. for those of you. And it was 39 people doing a hellacious CrossFit workout. So it looked like, you know, the Brady Bunch times 4 with kettlebells and punches and kicks. And so the answer to the question on, well, what else? Sometimes you who are trying to connect with someone who's pushing away is, you know, make it an unfair fight. Get them connected to Veteran Golfers Association, the craziest game on earth, golf. Josh Payton and the Veteran Golfers have over, you know, I think 8,000 golfers golfing nationwide. Not one suicide in 5 years. Seriously. So golf, you know, it'll drive you mad. But when you're with people, social distancing in some of the states, the golf courses are open. Or Links to Freedom Golf, or equestrian work, or walking, you know, future pets that are going to be, you know, comfort pets, or, you know, when we can, be Big Sarge out there to help the youth. So there are ways to get everyone involved and find the one that's right. Down the Stretch Ranch in Spokane, Washington, unites veterans and racehorses. So all of these are out there. Contact us if you're interested, because being connected for real, and then being connected by way of mind or spirit, these are the things that will let you look in the rearview mirror and say, I didn't think I'd get through that. And you look at where I am today, right? Again, just a quick, so we've got a note from Kelly, it looks like. Seems like a nice thank you.
Well, so Kelly was talking about was what looks like, Kelly, you were at the event last year, and you're a teacher working with high-risk populations, and I basically said that the book is very empowering, and that you've shared it with your school counselors. So I really appreciate that, and I'm glad you find it helpful. You know, some of the most meaningful speaking engagements and events that I've done over the years have been with, like, kids, high school students, and it's just amazing to see, number one, how mature they are. When I encounter a traumatized child who has overcome so much, they're often like adult level in terms of their experience and level, and it's just very hard for kids to connect at that level of maturity with other people. So I've found that, you know, I'm not one to like market my own stuff at all, and but just books in general, right? That I think intellect, rationality, academia, right? This constant pursuit of knowledge and wisdom. Philosophy is the love of wisdom, right? It's the love of the pursuit of wisdom. And I think for me, philosophy has been a lifesaver, as has music and playing guitar. But the reason is that so I've come to believe that creativity is the pathway through trauma. Right? Trauma is known for leaving us trapped in the past, right? It turns us into this ball, right? Creativity is the function that blasts us through that and disrupts it. there are ways to disrupt our mind with intellect and thought. So if you have like a book or an article or a segment that that you can share around, discuss, or even give to people who are struggling in isolation, sometimes that can be a bit of a breakthrough for them. It can be a conversation starter, right? It can be the catalyst that kind of facilitates a conversation that gets long-term momentum going. So I would definitely encourage you to connect with whatever books work with you and use that as a tool to facilitate discussion.
Hey, John. Hey, first of all, Kelly Marie, thanks for that both comment. Thanks to Josh and your insightfulness on how he's helping others. Josh, since you visited the museum, you're in the museum, featured in the museum, and you've gone through it. What effect, what feelings did you have because you have gone there? I'm asking you, for those who haven't gone there, they can go soon. They'll be able to go by way of a virtual and online tour, but to visit us, what's in it for them? Over.
Sir, I was, to be honest with you, like blatantly honest, I was stunned when I came out to the museum for a couple reasons. One, I was kind of moving so fast at the time, I didn't even really know what this was all about in the beginning. I was just knocking out interviews and didn't really know the sacredness of what this facility really was all about until I was out there. And thousands of people in the community of Columbus, across the state, across the country showed up, thousands of people. I think we had, 6 or 7 congressmen and senators, Colin Powell, the VA secretary. I mean, it was just a tremendous, I haven't felt that level of support for veterans, I don't think, since I've left the military. And I think, number one, one thing that I didn't know is, number one, that Columbus, Ohio is a great place to visit. It's a beautiful city, right? And I would say that even so, it's not just the city itself and how it's laid out, but it's the people inside the city. And that is definitely a huge part of that museum, a critical part of the museum. In the museum itself, and then you see this beautiful, like the architecture behind you on your backdrop, sir, like that is like, I was talking to the lead architect on the opening day, and I mean, it is worth going just to look at that architecture, this blend of concrete and glass. First time architects have ever attempted a design like that. And then, of course, you go into the museum itself, and you just see these in exceptional stories and exceptional experiences that not only move through generations, but that the thing that I really appreciated about the museum is that it's dynamic. It's not just about what's in the museum. That's representative of the larger, much larger population and much larger picture. Like it is not Josh Montz as one of 25 that is elevated above the rest. Like it is an element of an experience that represents the spirit of our American service members, right? And something that we want to celebrate as a country. So I think you will not only get a lot from the museum, you'll get a lot from the aesthetics and just the architecture, and you'll get a lot of I think just what a really modern, beautiful city looks like. I was really just amazed by Columbus. Can't wait to come back.
Great, thanks for that. We hear, and I think we're going to start. We just saw from Kelly Marie. We're hearing people say, my brother came through here. He's much better off. Or we participated in a webinar. It makes great sense. And even here, my dear friend Kevin Batul's writing to you. Read that off. And again, this is what it's all about. This is why we think we exist. Thanks, Kevin, out there.
Yeah, Kevin, great. This is great. It said Josh's reference to suffering and enduring sounds like Viktor Frankl. He chooses his attitude every day. Such an inspiration to many, and very appreciative for the NVMM for hosting this. Viktor Frankl, one of my just most cherished authors, wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. For those of you who don't know, he's a Holocaust survivor turned psychiatrist afterwards. And just, it's a very short read. I think it's a must read for anyone. But Man's Search for Meaning, in that book, Frankl says just some profound things, one of which is, without suffering and death, human life cannot be complete. And in pandemics, right, again, we go back to this moral, spiritual orientation, struggling with these questions of good and evil and suffering and death is a very difficult thing to do. Our world's best minds have been struggling with it for millennia. But what we've kind of noticed now, like looking just through, when we kind of synthesize science with humanism and kind of look what's happening, it seems that the nexus between the two of those, the combination where we blend science and humanism together, that really rests in this creative space where we can always find beauty within suffering. We can always find beauty within darkness. This is that medical surgeon holding up an iPhone so a family member can see their loved one before they go, right? That is beautiful and tragic, right? But it's those kinds of things that I think give so much more depth and meaning to our lives. This isn't to say I'm glorifying trauma or suffering, but it is that I do believe that trauma and suffering is for whatever reason, it is a function of our lives. We encounter it, and it's not the first time, right? I mean, just in the last 100 years, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, right? Desert Storm, many other types of conflicts, many other types of SARS, swine flu, COVID-19, right? 9/11, global terrorism, a rapid increase in technology, right? We're going through a lot, and we're coming through it together, folks, and that's so. I really appreciate that comment, Kevin. Viktor Frankl's one of my favorites.
We got a note here from Richard Hoffman. Richard is one of the most humble leaders that I know. He's a giant of a man. His heart is bigger than even he is. He's one of our volunteers, and we have 50 dedicated volunteers, 100 volunteers based on their schedules, but just that come when they can. And he is saying what's really, really important, because he tells yours and the story of the other 24 or so to other people. So you're giving him a touch of real life. That's what he's saying in this note. So go ahead and read that to our team, and this will be pretty close to our wrap-up.
Sounds good, sir. Yeah, Richard Hoffman says, as a tour guide, hearing you today can only add to what I have to say about the wonderful 25 of you we get to hear. There's a lot more to know when we briefly get to hear you in the museum. Thank you for sharing the experience. So Richard, thank you. I think we met when I was out there. And it's, that team of volunteers, like, they really set the conditions for the experience of the museum. I think it's a very welcoming place to go. I hope that, look, again, just to reinforce more than anything else, we're trying to add some color and contrast to the landscape of what's going on right now, so we can talk about it in a more comprehensive and complete way. And I'll just reinforce again, like, if anything hit you today, or if anything resonated with you, I'd encourage you to take that home, talk about it with your kids, your family members, your loved ones, your friends, and just get a discussion going on it, and see where it goes, see what happens. I hope that you all find that a rewarding activity.
Hey, listen, our idea is to help. When people ask me, hey, what is it that you do? I say we help. Let's just, boil it down to the essence. So you can help too. You out there may know someone who also has compelling stories or compelling thoughts to help others, and stitch together this network of inspiring leaders such as Josh and Jennifer, and many to come, Doc Campbell and Teresa. It says behind me, I think, membership fuels and leads our mission. And so we don't get any federal money. And so every once in a while, one of you asks, why are you always asking for money? And it's because we need it. But I'll tell you what, we're open. I have the most amazing staff who have totally shifted and lifted their guns to go right after delivering experience and hope and impact through the digital, online, blogging, newsletters, and webinars like this. So join as a member. If you're in a veteran resource group, challenge all of them to be the best team for the upcoming virtual run. You can pick your start point and end point and be a winner. And attend the virtual rally point this Saturday, please. And then join us on the memorial service. Again, you can take your iPhone or your smartphone and say, my name is Kevin Batul, and I will always remember so-and-so. And you get your say on Memorial Day. So Josh, thanks for being with us again. It's really, really awesome to spend this time with you, and thank everybody out there for joining us, and pass the word that there's something special happening at the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and it is the people that we get to meet, interact with, and bring to you. And with that, I would love to close meetings by saying, Josh, close us out.
Well, sir, thank you. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to show up today, and just for everything you're doing. So keep lifting up and thanking those medical professionals, and hopefully we're looking forward to a comeback summer here, and a great year. So we wish you all the best and stay safe.
Okay, and to Brad and Jinx, who put the backbone of this together for us, congrats. It worked great, as always. And God bless you all. Have a great day, a great safe weekend. And remember, your quarantine 15 is what you lost because of great PT. And if you're really good, it's a COVID-19 loss. So those Cheetos and others, take 2 steps back and enjoy your life. Hug someone you love and reach out to someone who needs to hear from you. Thank you all. And that concludes today's inspiring story. Thank you, Josh. Out here.
Sure.